Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we explore role-playing video games in depth most of the time. And also, occasionally, forays into academic literature, I guess. My name is Jeff Root, the host and ringleader of this operation. Joining me, celebrated 100 series Realian, Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
Hello, everybody. Normally, I start the podcast off with some sort of ill-gotten reference to wrestling, but I feel like I've entitled our Philistine Jeff Rudd a all-Japan Pro Wrestling supporter, Philistine, bad man, communist, scumbag. So I've decided that today I'm going to go with Braden. Hey, Braden. Hi. Let's talk about wonderful elf boys that recently got new starting positions, and it's so good.
Hi, I'm Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted, and I'm here to tell you that Beastmaster Rakarth has one of the best starting locations in Mortal Empires. Quite possibly a top 10 starting location.
Yes, it is. I would say that also his mechanics kind of make Marcus Wolfhart look kind of half-baked in comparison to how much more dynamic his position is versus his.
Yep.
The problem is that the Dark Elves is their Forbidden Workshop stand-in still sucks. It's still bad. I don't like it. I don't care if they've made it slightly better. It's only marginally better.
I'm sorry. This started. Is this New Japan stuff? You started with wrestling.
Okay, so things I know about
Kazuchi Okada is better than anything in your fucking garbage bag wrestling promotion.
Miyahara is
garbage. He's the guy, right?
Miyahara Kento is like one of the most underrated wrestlers in the universe right now.
He looks like he's taking steroids, my man.
I like the lady wrestler who Maki Ito, who gives the finger.
Yep.
And speaking of giving the finger, Xenosaga, episode 1.
Yes,
we sure did a lot, but we also did so little.
We're gonna get into it. Xenosaga episode 1, Devils Remarked, Monolith Soft, Namco, PlayStation 2, February 2002, in Japan. We covered generously the first, stanza of this fucking game last time, and I'm gonna say we've gotten about to the halfway point-ish, probably, but we'll get into it. Before we get too far into it, if you, the listener, and I know you're out there for reasons we'll get into, would like to be a part of these discussions, and would like to, correct us, yell at us, cajole us, enjoy our company, you can do that. It's possible. It's free. It's not free, actually. You have to join our goddamn Patreon.
It's literally $1.
Yeah, patreon.com/deeplistens. Any total. $1 is usually the going rate. You stick $1 in there, you get access to a super secret Discord full of cool people, and also me. You can also send questions to us via electronic mail. You can send those to inquiries@deep.lol. That is inquiries@deep.lol. You will be like our first write-in, our first little comment we got. We got an email. Someone out there in the ether heard us, and they gave us feedback. By the name of Joe. Joe writes. Yeah.
Like Grandpa Joe Willy Wonka style?
Fuck Grandpa Joe. Monster.
Wait, Mr. President, thank you for listening to our podcast.
Y'all talking about ice cream?
Man.
Oh, that's crazy. Joe writes, I'm gonna clip this one off at a certain point for reasons that should become obvious. Years ago in high school, I was a mega Xeno fan. I spent one summer reading the entire Perfect Works on a notepad document that I copy-pasted from GameFAQs. It's been years since I played any of these games, and thought it would be fun to try to summarize the plot before listening to this episode, and then see how close I got. See below. So this is a stream of consciousness summary of most of this game. So I'm gonna
read this. Read this on the final episode.
I'm gonna read through roughly where we've gotten.
Okay.
This is pretty terse, but it's all right. The game starts with Shion, who is Bae. That is his editorial note. Playing video games with her robot friend Cosmos. They fight enemies and then fight a giant robot. Shion pilots a giant robot, but Cosmos can't because it's considered a hate crime. After that, there is some guy who is robo-racist and thinks that robots are going to take his job. The Gnosis attack. Sure. They look like the ghosts from the spirits within. Yep. The racist dies, and there is a cutscene with a hooded figure saying, "So it is time."
Right.
We cut to a cyborg named Richter, or Reinhardt. He is RoboCop. He can't pilot robots because he was given he was given childbirthing robo hips and can't fit inside. He rescues Momo.
My ass is too dummy thick.
But I'm dummy thick. He rescues Momo from Albedo, who kidnaps children to make himself immortal. They escape. We cut to Shion and Cosmos. Shion takes Cosmos to the mall because she's never been shopping. At the food court, they meet Chaos, an anime dandy, and somewhere they meet Junior, who is a small, horny man. Momo and Reinhardt come into the scene sometime. At this point, everyone goes to a hot spring before the Gnosis attack again. Right. Shion realizes she left her phone at the mall, so everyone travels into the belly of a giant Gnosis to retrieve it. There's a flashback where we see the Albedo become a vampire. We find out that Junior is a clone and used to have many small brothers. We find out that he hates albino because of all the clones he grew the tallest. That's I don't want to get too much further than that. Joe, thank you.
Doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
Or the Lord's work of Zohar emulators.
Yep.
Remarkably close, is what I will say. But before we dig in, ZP, I will cede the floor to you, and I'll preface this by saying I'm very sorry. First of all, I did two dum-dums. One, I went very long.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as long as you because I don't want to force you to edit my thing down.
I went long.
Also, yeah, we listened to a 30-hour lecture, or 30-minute lecture, for those that maybe got the abbreviated version of it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to make an executive decision and cut down my intended lecture just because we need to talk about this Sony PlayStation Network shit.
My brother-in-law was listening to our last podcast, and he's like, "It's been 40 minutes, and you still haven't talked about Xenosaga." And I'm like, "No, but listen, it's very important that you learn about."
It's a deep listens tradition. The other thing I'll say is the first time we posted this episode, I left it in cool editor mode and was playing back about 110% the speed it ought to have.
I was going to say we sounded a little up-pitched, but I didn't want to hurt your self-esteem.
That was a boo-boo. Should have been fixed, so if you downloaded the show and it sounded like the Chipmunks rendition of Off the Deep End, that should be better now. I don't know if it got fixed on YouTube.
It did not get fixed on YouTube.
It did not.
That's cool. I'm not responsible for that. That is someone else's problem.
So what do we want to talk about? My lecture, or are we jumping into fuck Sony?
I leave that to you. That's your discretion.
I'll do my thing. So I am, just to give you my whole perspective is I grew up in a multi-ethnic, culturally diffuse household where we had, people of Jewish descent. We had, part of my family is Japanese, so Buddhist. We had people who were Unitarian Christians from the fine state of Missouri. And so my parents made an executive decision to, hey, we got to strike a balance. The best way to find a balance between all of this is let's be a secular household. So I honestly cannot muster up the interest in terms of religious delving into, even though that's exactly what this game is. However, I was a social science studies minor in my younger days. And one thing that I definitely got into was the study of cognitive behavior therapy and cognitive psychology. And the thing that has over time with Xenosaga that has always kind of perked my ears up is whenever there are weird proper nouns or references to things like the subconscious. And the thing that I have picked up time and time again, whether it's Eudo or Gnosis or the collective unconscious, which is also known as the Undus Mundus, I think is what they call it, which is a bunch of gobbledygook. But if you did my areas of expertise and kind of some of what I would talk about or studied, most of this is related to psychology, but more specifically, Freudian psychoanalytic psychology, and even then, a off branch of that said Freudian psychology, which is Jungian psychology. There was a schism, if we would feel so dramatic about it, between Carl Jung, who was originally supposed to be the proverbial carrier or torchbearer of traditional Freudian psychoanalysis, and then Carl Jung basically broke his own path. And this is something that Monolith have always kind of liked when they surface psychological issues, when they surface physiological issues. It's usually presented within the ideas of either Sigmund Freud, Friedrich Nietzsche, and then also Carl Jung. And that seems to, as someone who did play Xenogears, that seems to have definitely ramped up with Xenosaga, with a preference towards Carl Jung. And so this led to me, in response to Jeff, this is something that I've always wondered. Why is Jungian psychology and Freudian psychology so prevalent in anime, in Japanese media, when you're bound to get a psychologist or some sort of mental illness? The treatment is always psychotherapy. And there is something to say about the legacy of Freud and the legacy of Carl Jung, and how people, even with a preponderance of evidence, still hold on to those core beliefs and still further the psychotherapy model as the end all be all with mental health issues. Japan in particular really loves it some Jungian id superego stuff or different personalities. And so I did some deep diving. And so this led me to probably, I'll just go ahead and say it, it led me to do a deep dive in PubMed. And the first thing that I found was I'm going to butcher these names, and I truly am sorry about this, is an article dating back to about 2016 called How Jungian Psychology Has Been Developed in Japan by Yasuhiro Yamanaka. And Yoshihiro Yamanaka basically pinpoints two figureheads as being the reason why Jungian and Freudian psychology really took hold in Japan, and why Japan as a culture still kind of likes those models in particular in terms of psychology. The first is a man by the name of Kyoko Nakamura, who was born in 1931, and his big area of expertise is he was trying to explain split personality disorder. Now, hard stop here. It is important to note that split personality disorder as an actual medical diagnosis is controversial. There are many people who still believe that it does not exist because it's just a different form or a manifestation of either schizophrenia or some sort of already more popularized neurosis. And when I looked it up, the DSM does say that you should always check for schizophrenia before you devolve into split personality disorder or different other.
I'd like to punctuate that very briefly, not to totally disrail this, but there's like a fun schism between, let's say, the psychiatric community and, I know this because this is what my spouse is studying, the like therapy, like counseling community, over a number of things, among them like the value of the DSM and sort of treating these things as sort of a medical model stuff. So personality disorders, stuff like schizophrenia and multiple personality stuff, there's like a lot of ongoing conversations between different like very intelligent people, of whom I am not one of them, over like how these things ought to be interpreted or explained. And this all gets like really muddied up because in America, in order to go see really any sort of like therapist for any sort of mental health thing, it's all got to be coded and explained in a fun way, as opposed to just like I'm seeking counseling services. So the DSM, it's an important book, maybe not the be all end all.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's why there's the ICD. There's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So Nakamura Kyoko, he was a psychologist in all the way up to post-World War II Japan. And from 1917 until 1940, he had a maid. And he diagnosed his maid as having split personality disorder. Now, again, I hate to do this. Hard stop. Many people would say that Nakamura Kyoko not actually treating his maid's neurosis or disorder and instead just making observational notes would be considered medically malfeasant or irresponsible by most standards today, but it gives us kind of a snapshot. This man was literally running through all of the known models of psychology at the time, and he really couldn't explain why is this poor woman who's done nothing but nice things for me for all of my life been afflicted with this personality disorder, this split personality disorder. And he ended up coming into contact with the works of Freud. And as he was observing his maid with a true manifested psychological psychiatric issue, he decided to scaffold Freud's theory of subconsciousness to explain why she had this model of dissociation. Now, this is where things get really, really muddy. He started his study, again, before World War II, and it ultimately got published and culminated after World War II. And the reason why I note this is because Kyoko's works were definitely rooted in an era of Shinto Buddhism that was very particular to pre and post World War II. If you know, you know. Long story short, Meiji Restoration Japan basically merged Shintoism with Buddhism when they were considered two differing philosophies in order to kind of lift up the religion in general as kind of a rallying cry that they had, you know, our version of Christianity, kind of to create this imperialistic visage during that Meiji Restoration. So we oftentimes talk about how in Japan they have this religion Shinto. It's really super complicated. Not going to jump into that, though. Yep. There are certain characters that manifest Shintoism in real weird and odd ways where we can have that conversation there. So he really liked Freudian psychology because he felt like this is a scientific explanation that merges well with my own personal religious beliefs. I can talk about chakras in a medical journal, which there's something to say about that, but boy howdy, he published his works and they were taken over. His works end up getting into the hold of a man by Hayao Kawai. And he is a hardcore Japanese Jungian psychologist, and he is considered the founder of the Japanese analytical and clinical psychology movement, the first true psychoanalytic psychotherapy organization. And in Japan, even during World War II, there weren't a lot of resources in terms of treating mental health issues. So someone presenting a panacea, if you would, to address mental health issues, he started to get really popular. And so he wrote even books of ethics, But again, it is important to note, and I ended up looking this part up, and I will talk a little bit about Heio Kawai. Psychotherapy in itself as a subscription, as a prescription to mental health, there's a lot to be said about how the actual science is still in dispute. The current verdict by the APA is that it might work in good circumstances, but the downside is that when done poorly, the consequences are very bad. Jeff, does that sound like a good kind of middle ground Sparks Notes version of that? Okay, so here's where we get into some problems. He basically sold his shit as if he was the leader of Kumon tutoring. He sold his analytic model to basically all of Japan. Again, one of the driving reasons why Jungian and Freudian psychology got popular is they viewed the concepts of id, superego, and different personalities as being complementary to Shinto Buddhism, whether it's chakras, energies, or, the ideas or concepts of the afterlife. The problem is that as it is rooted in psychoanalysis, the actual efficacy of what they were advocating for, the actual efficacy of what they were promoting, has always been in dispute. In Kawai's example, he introduced the idea of play therapy in Japan as a way to deal with virtually almost every type of child or prepubescent mental health disorder. In particular, he was really a fan of what would now be called sand play, where you give them a box of sand, you give them a tray of toys, and you see which toys they place on top of the sand and they play around with. The belief being, if you pick up the toy soldiers, then they are violent. If you use one of the dollhouse, then maybe you're creative. Again, I cannot emphasize enough whether or not this has any form of efficacy has always been in dispute because, again, Freud himself, a lot has been done to unpin his theories as not being actual science. Generally speaking, there was a 50s to 60s era of Japanese psychology where the only psychology that was present in the entire country was by this one guy who read a book that maybe poorly translated, a book by Jung, and then they wanted to take out the parts of Jungian psychology that were complementary to Buddhism, in particular Zen Buddhism, so as that they could further their nationalistic sensibilities in terms of promoting Shinto Buddhism as the end-all be-all religion in Japan. Questions?
Okay, yeah, this sounds...
When did you take interest in this topic specifically?
I have always kind of liked social psychology.
So this just stems out of like high school, early college stuff, or?
Yeah, I was always a fan. And of course, the real current model now is what we would call biopsychosocial, understanding that psychology and mental health is both a biological, a social, and a medical construct in which all of the pieces are working together rather than cognitive therapy is the only thing. But then again, I do get a good kick out of, someone like, Noam Chomsky taking the piss out of B.F. Skinner, or, the Zimbardo experiment later being proven to be complete bullshit.
Yeah, this checks out. There are a surprising number of cases throughout history of just like one dude with the right influence at the right time influencing an entire field.
But it's really weird because in that first translation, he takes Jung's idea of schizophrenia, and then he's trying to scaffold this idea of Engi Ritsu, or a very Buddhist idea of chi. And then someone else picked up on that and then made a school of psychology, and it was the only school of psychology for like 30 years.
I did my thesis on Dr. Benjamin Rush, so I can tell you all about how one person can fuck up an entire medical field for decades.
But Benjamin Rush, a pretty good person in terms of getting money solid in the United States.
Yeah, he's fascinating. I just by the end of that paper, I think I maybe hated him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about the Sony shit?
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah,
Move into that.
Thanks for that, by the
Yeah.
way. Like that's super interesting, and like, yeah, a lot of Japanese media loves their Freudian and Jungian psychology. Like, I mean, persona is straight up a Jungian term.
They've made a lot of money off the back of Carl Jung. Basically.
Like, Hayao Kawaya also was really weird in that he wrote a lot of very popular nursery rhymes in Japanese, which then later influenced like the Japanese syllabary and like the Ministry of Education's policy in terms of how to teach language. Which I guess that makes sense because B.F. Skinner later tried to apply his theories to the development of language, and Noam Chomsky has oscillated between am I a linguist or a social psychologist since he wrote his first book. But okay, Sony is closing down the PS3, PS Vita, PSP marketplaces, and
Probably.
It sounds like
so this is not confirmed yet, but it's been reported and picked up by like basically what remains of respectable online journalism. Like, there's enough people with their names attached to this now that it seems likely.
And what's worse is that, and I shared this with both Braden and Jeff, you actually have the better technological explanation. The solution will not be to buy all this shit before the system gets shut down because of a kernel issue. Jeff, do you explain what this is?
Let's try to keep this within my own understanding of this shit too. Right. Okay, so when you are using a PlayStation 3, which, first of all 12 of us that are still out there, we're a special club now. And this has always been like this, though. If you go poke around in, like, any piece of software, you'll see, like, there's a token in there. And it happens annually for stuff that you got through PlayStation Plus, where it says, like, hey, this piece of software you've got permission to use. And you've got rights for it until N day, which is like the day that your PlayStation Plus existing subscription expires. At which point, if you renew, it just tacks on another year to that date. So you can go in there right now and see, like, if you downloaded the Hitman HD trilogy, mine says it's good through February 2022, like, for instance. So somewhere in this software stack, there is some sort of ping, some sort of call to a time server somewhere that is happening at like a very low level in this system. And what is being alleged, assuaged, purported by some folks online is that at a certain point, if you disable this shop, there's a chance you will basically disable the ability of all these systems to talk anymore. So, let's say you've got software that's like good for a year or good for X amount of time. I don't know what purchase software actually looks like. I'll go look at it at some point. But if that system can't communicate with some sort of central time server that manages, like, hey, like, you've got a license to use this, there's a chance that the whole thing could just go to shit. Just be like, yeah, this you don't have the ability to play these digital goods. These aren't, like, associated with your account. Who knows what the error would be? But that would be that. Right. So I don't know how to write low-level, like, kernel software. I'm not, like, I don't write the fucking Linux kernel shit. I know precious, barely, like, tiny little bit about syncing time servers and shit. I don't know what the plausible solution here is. However, I do know that it's pretty simple to take, like, the desktop computer or even your phone that you're using right now and ping a, like, time.nist.gov or whatever. This seems kind of wild. I would be interested at this point in figuring out what they are going to do and if they do have a solution. And if not, this is probably the point where everyone starts looking into PS3 Hen, I guess. Or any number of custom firmware solutions that are out there for the system.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate best case scenario is that they create a marketplace that they later sunset
Because, I mean, here's the thing. Like, Nintendo shit-canned the Wii Virtual Console and WiiWare stuff. Like, you can still buy stuff on a Wii U, but, like, if you own a Wii U and launch the Wii mode of that, the Wii store in that virtual Wii is no longer up. The shop on the original Wii is no longer up. The DSiWare store on a DSi is no longer up. However, none of that software has lost its ability to just run if you already own it. And some of that probably has to do with the fact that Nintendo is roughly in about 1994 or 5 in terms of, like, the sophistication of their, like, web op shit, whereas Sony is somewhat more sophisticated. So it seems like the less competent company maybe walked backwards into this not being a problem despite having shit-canned the store, which maybe is the actual problem. But if this all goes to chalk, that would be pretty insane. Like, there's some software that becomes basically unplayable at a certain point, then gets lost, and just... there's, like, 2 tacks to this. First of all, this is, like, all but inviting piracy at this point on a platform that is still basically alive. And also, I don't know why you would consider, and ZP, you brought this point up, going out and buying an all-digital console from a platform holder who, if they do this, is very clearly saying, hey, like, sometimes the digital stuff you buy from us, we're just going to make sure you can't use that anymore. Sorry, pound sand.
Yeah.
Like, and, like, the it's not like this is, in the cosmic scheme of things, all that bonkers. The fact is, like, it's PSP stuff that's being affected too, so you have, like, 17 years worth of software kind of potentially being sunset, like your ability to purchase it.
Yeah. There's something also to be said about the amount of technology or the amount of media that has been published using these marketplaces that has never been published physically, or not every game is bound to get the remaster treatment.
Correct, yeah. And you know, hey, there's a lot of just horrible dog shit on all of these platforms. WiiWare, DSiWare, PlayStation Vita, like, there's a lot of fucking garbage. Like, shit that is, like, if not necessarily, like, hateful or, like, mean-spirited or actively mean, just bad fucking games. But they're games, and they're part of our heritage, damn it, and they're gonna be gone.
I want to be able to play my PSN copy of Pain on PS3.
That thing sucks.
There are a number of games that directly impact us for this dumbass podcast. Because
yeah, like the PS3, just for this podcast, the PS3 is the last time that Sony had some sort of program in which you could buy classic PS1 and PS2 titles. The PS1 and PS2 Classics program never got translated into the PS4. It likely will not be translated into the PS5. They just
did a handful of PS2 games and then gave up.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's cool that I have an HD version of Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2, but you basically didn't do anything
But
beyond.
These programs are basically, they live and die on these platforms that they're probably going to sunset. And on top of that, say what you will about the PS Vita or the PSP, but both of those handhelds had years in which they were supported by indie and small Japanese developers that released their titles on those platforms exclusively using the digital marketplace. Like, the amount of PS Vita, arbitrary, I think you remember it. Who was the user who published the monthly updates on games that on Giant Bomb of games that were being published? I
forgot. But yeah,
the PS Vita? It was an absurd amount of games that were exclusively coming to the Vita and only through the digital marketplace. And unless those games are ported to the PC or the developers are still interested in spreading those games to other communities, those games are going to live and die. And I don't know. I use the term lost media whenever I blog about these sorts of topics, but I worry that no matter what happens, there's going to be a level of lost media. Because when Impulse, the digital marketplace, got bought by GameStop, your games fucking disappeared and died. When, you know, Microsoft, who is recently being presented as this wonderful alternative of backwards compatibility, when they shit-can games for Windows Live in favor of just bringing the Xbox interface and the Xbox marketplace to the PC, or Windows Software Suite, they shit-canned all of your purchases on games for Windows Live. They basically died. So this is a behavior that is horribly endemic of software and technology in general, and it's just going to get worse, especially as these console manufacturers view digital-only consoles as a legitimate alternative to, making the more expensive one with the disk drive. Because eventually that leads to them making more profit because they're not physically printing goods and then distributing them to other marketplaces. They can cut the middleman and just sell a digital copy.
I don't want a doomsday clock on my digital copies of Suikoden 1 and 2.
Right.
I want Jumping Flash whenever I want it, god damn it.
And you know what? Like, the thing is, I mean, like, whatever. Shame on them if they're gonna fuck up the literally hundreds of dollars I've put into having stuff legitimately on this PlayStation 3. And you know what? It's kind of their loss because, let me tell you, even after the Nintendo really laying the hammer down on a couple sites that distribute these things, it has become easier than ever to just get your hands on all of this shit. Like,
and also, Jeff, remember the good old days of the PSP? What were the three big things that the PSP, the original PSP, was used for?
Copies of
pornography,
on UMD.
Hardcore pornography, Monster Hunter, and it was one of the most easy-to-use homebrew devices you have ever seen because that thing got cracked within months in which it was published.
I mean, straight up, I bought one from a used game shop, and I felt kind of sheepish doing it. It was like a year and a half ago, because, like, man, I'm fucking never buying a PSP game from you guys. Like, I will never, ever buy a goddamn PSP physical game, because there's just no need. I
have a UMD of Tactics Ogre still in my closet at my parents' house.
Like, the only reason you would buy one of those things is to, like, look at it, like, have it on a shelf. Like, it's too easy. But the one thing I had a hard time with was getting Master System stuff to go, but I figured that out. Like, so anyway, I don't know. This seems like a poorly thought out thing, and I hope if they go through with it, they have a way to honor everyone's purchases.
Probably.
We will see. I will say, I will weigh how they handle this on my decision to... There's like one more axis on my buy a PlayStation 5 chart now, which, let me tell you, already had a couple. Because there was the... Do they physically exist? Are there literally any of them? What's coming out on this platform and when? And when is it coming out on PC? And now I've got are they just gonna fuck me in 15 years? Which, 15 years is a long time. I'm gonna be, like, nearly 50 years old at that point. I may not want to sit down and play launch PS5 titles, but the principle
think about
of
this,
the thing.
Jeff. I mean, so the Wii shop started in 2006, and it got basically shut down in 2019. That's 13 years, so it's not unreasonable to expect an entire digital marketplace to be shut down. In fact, it might be the industry standard. So what I'm saying is that Cosmos would not have approved of the destruction of technology.
Xenosaga. We have to get back in. We're gonna get on. When we left, all of we've consolidated our big hipped robot Ziggy, our Moe girl Momo, Shion, Cosmos, and the gang from Cowboy Bebop are all on one ship.
Yep.
And the next thing that happens is we cut over to everyone's favorite small man boy going on a brief excursion in a robot, as I recall. And we get introduced to the cast and crew of the ship, the Durandal.
Yes.
Which is comprised of this, the name is eventually revealed, Guinan Jr., who everyone refers to as either just Junior or the far tastier Little Master. And there was a moment in this, so it's like maybe about 5 minutes of gameplay happens for like the next 30 minutes, so it's like about the same ratio as the rest of the game. But there's a moment where you are out on this, you're doing like so the Durandal rolls up on like the scene where this fight happened at the end of the last episode, if I recall, between the Gnosis and the fleet that Shion and Cosmos were a part of, and they're just like there to recover or attempt to recover the, goddammit, Zohar emulator.
You don't mess with the Zohar.
You don't mess with the Zohar.
I forget. Guinan, who is named after a Star Trek character, but that's neither here nor there.
Yes.
Is it established that he is not human? I forget.
At this point, no. It's some things are alluded to, so
there's like weird hints that he ain't what he says he is.
Yeah.
He is not, in fact, a small child.
Yes. So the ship that he's on is full of 100 series Realians, aka the little Moe girls, for reasons that are not immediately explained. And then also 2 hot anime ladies who respectively look like Morrigan and a blonde body pillow and like a weird sailor outfit. Morrigan of Darkstalkers fame, I guess.
Or Dragon Age. They both fit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Their names are Mary and Shelley. Okay.
So just to... Yep.
Do you get it?
Out of curiosity, where did we stop in terms of our plot summary with the first podcast? Because we kind of need to address like the continuity break that I unfortunately afflicted with the last episode.
Okay, so I think we ended with Momo and Ziggy being rescued on the Elsa.
Yes.
Correct.
And I think that was, and like, Shion giving Trenkov dinner.
Okay.
And him...
I insist that we need to talk about this scene because the whole weird thing that happens with Chernikov, Shion, and then eventually Cosmos, I literally don't understand what the scene was meant to convey.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? Where is this?
So Shion makes curry. Chernikov likes the curry and then acts really weird to Shion. And then Chernikov goes to Cosmos. And I don't understand what the point of this... It's not just the idea. I actually like a good little fun and about, like, we've been through a lot together. Let's have a nice, warm cooked meal. That part of this scene, I'm fine with. Chernikov is evil dude, clearly. But there's this extra expository transitional scene or moment between Chernikov and Cosmos, which feels completely out of place. It's a total anachronism, and I don't know what they're hinting at in terms of what they're going with.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, I think Chernikov led this UTIC team to attack the team that was making Cosmos.
Yes.
And that's when Cosmos goes full, like, murder
Super
robot.
Saiyan, yeah.
Yeah. And murders a bunch of people, and I assume we will get more of that later. But yeah, I assume
and then
that's why
there's the one guy that I think Jeff, you had a hard time remembering his name, but he's going to come up again. Is Margulis?
Yeah, I inserted that name into the edited version of the show. Yes, Margulis.
So Chernikov is connected with Margulis because they're both a part of the UTIC organization. I think.
Yes.
Or something shadier than UTIC. I didn't quite get the Margulis and UTIC connection, but Chernikov is certainly in UTIC.
I can only assume because, like, if Chernikov is connected to Margulis, then there must be some sort of or maybe he's a double agent into UTIC. But I'm just going to go ahead and say UTIC doesn't seem like a great place.
They seem like the bad guys.
They seem
perhaps.
bad. They seem like baddies.
So
they say a lot of sinister things.
Chernikov wants to, like, maybe steal Cosmos, but whenever he talks to Cosmos, He's like a creeper.
Yeah, it's icky energy. She's like in her like
It's
sleepy pod
super
thing.
gross.
Yeah.
What was the scene where he's like looking over a hibernating cosmos?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
And then he points a gun at her. Yeah. And then Shion comes in and gives him the curry. Yeah.
And I don't...
It's a weird...
It's weird, and
see,
like,
here's the reason
I feel
why,
like something was... I don't know if it was just like something not conveyed in the text,
or like maybe...
Yeah.
It's just sort of like weird body language going on.
This is a weird problem with this game, is like there are some scenes in this game, and I think we can all agree, where when they play out, they're totally incoherent. Like you don't understand what the game is trying to accomplish.
This game is setting up a lot of J.J. Abrams mystery boxes.
Yes.
In a way that I based on the reputation of the later two games, I'm gonna guess maybe they don't all pay off in the most satisfying fashion. But I think it's fun. But also, it's just this game goes so hard into anime ass, Evangelion ass scenes of characters talking ominously about things you don't have the full context for.
There's an ocean of that, and there's also just a fucking several oceans worth of flashback stuff that go on.
Yeah. The thing with Cherenkov is that throughout this entire sequence, he's kind of portrayed as like a weirdo. Like his first appearance, he's dressing Shion down and basically saying, "Why aren't you making the robot faster?" But in every like summary scene, he is just an antisocial weirdo.
So it's also here when I feel like the game also provides more... Chaos is a character, all lowercase though.
Yep.
And he possesses some sort of like supernatural ability or some sort of special ability to destroy the Gnosis, which we already kind of know what you need to be able to do to destroy or make the Gnosis vulnerable. So I'm only assuming that he's some sort of magical boy, that even if it's left ambiguous in terms of what exactly he is, he's some sort of magical boy.
Yeah. He's also one of the better party members I've found.
Yeah, we when we talk about the mechanics, which I think is coming up soon, he has probably one of the better special abilities.
I've not used him once.
You're missing out because he has an AoE version of his normal ability that basically makes him one of the better sweepers in your party.
I've been playing this game like a caveman, unfortunately. I've been rocking the Shion Cosmos
I guess
stack.
Before we move on with the plot, how do we feel about this game's mechanics? Because when we last started, I think all of us there was a level of anxiety and hesitance in terms of using whatever you want to call the tech tree sphere grid system
Tech
is
points,
here, because it
points,
feels
skill
Yeah.
points.
because it feels like it will penalize you if you do even one step incorrectly or inefficiently.
I figured out. So there's a dungeon.
I just opened up a guide and followed.
There's
it,
a dungeon up
since
ahead
last
that
time.
really taught me. So like the first fight in this game, or one of the first ones in like the tutorial area, lays out this weird like system in the round thing where so there's 4 cycles the combat goes through. There's like a turn where nothing happens. The next turn there's like a higher chance to crit. The next turn there is more like ATB meter gets filled. And then the 4th turn, there is, if you kill something on that turn, they dump more points. So the entire, like, juice of this game is basically, and, like, the combat, I think, really starts to hammer this home when you get into the Cathedral dungeon that we'll talk about. But you've just got to kill people on that points turn, and you'll never want for anything. You've just got to line it up and be willing to take hits and heal and tank through it to get them so they die on turn 4. And if you can manage to do that consistently, you will be totally fine. And then the other part was I basically did what ZP did and discovered that the correct answer is, and kind of, I guess, sensed this because most enemies, when they punch you, just do normal punch. It's like, whatever, it's like token damage, it's fine. But when they do magic damage, it's like big AoE attacks that just fucking murder you. So it's like, right, magic defense. I need to boost that. And you can just spend points on boosting your magic defense or ether defense.
Yeah.
That's the correct answer. You can spend it on attack, which is useful to shorten fights, but I think the correct thing is just get your E-def over, like, as high as you can every single time, and then whatever you've got left spend on, like, getting your techs faster.
Yeah.
And then everything else is, like, what would you like to do?
I have found, putting T points into making the attack techs don't only take two actions to pull off.
Yeah.
Seems kind of crucial.
Absolutely.
Like, because those third stage attacks are so much more powerful than the other two.
Yeah, they do fucking token damage when you're just punching and kicking.
Yeah. Or it's like, what if Cosmos had a big old arm cannon and just blew him up?
Or a naval laser.
We'll get to that.
I think my problem is that all of the abilities I want to use, and this is just a personal preference, slow this game down to a goddamn crawl. Like, all of the flashy animations, all casting a spell, everything in this game takes fucking forever. It has the most exorbitant, kind of excessive animations. Even the most basic curative spells have these flashy things going off. It's like excessive to it puts Final Fantasy 7 and 8 to shame in terms of how excessive the animations are. It puts Chrono Cross, Jeff, to shame in terms of its excessive animations.
Some of it. It really begs for the Final Fantasy X shorten the summon animations after the first time I've seen it. Like, I'm good.
It is a JRPG from 2002.
Yeah. Look at what we could do in this DVD. All sorts of big everything. Yeah. The next plot beat is the ship that you were on, which is the Elsa, has got to go get some repairs, and they pull off in a spaceport. The name of which I did not write down.
I think it's literally called, like, Dock Colony or something.
That sounds right. It comes to light that this is a place that used to make realians of some sort of factory, and the government, during the Miltian conflict, more or less fucked the place up really good. So they don't really like government soldiers there. So the captain of the Elsa basically warns the party, hey, Treykov's going to go walking around in his outfit, which is like a military uniform. People are not going to like that. It's not going to go well for him. And sure enough, Treykov gets jumped.
He gets touched.
Gets touched. Gets surrounded. Well, this happens on the ship earlier, right? He's been touched by Gnosis. The one that Chaos destroys, which I think is where we actually ended the last episode.
Yeah.
So, Treykov basically wanders into a back alley and gets surrounded by a bunch of people who are like, hey, fuck you! A Hebrew character shows up on his forehead. You then cut to the rest of the party being like, oh no, where's Treykov? You go looking around for him. This is like the only gameplay that's happened for a little while. It's like you walking across the small map. And then there's just a pile of fucking bodies where they're all beaten nearly to death. Let's see. We're back on the ship. This is where Treykov says he doesn't enjoy the concept of nanosurgery to Momo to heal whatever, like, minor damage he took in this scuffle. Ziggy says something to the effect that he is uncomfortable with the idea of having Shion perform maintenance on him, but prefers Momo does it because Momo is pure of heart.
Sure. I guess that makes sense. Whatever.
This is the point where I was like,
Momo's a magical girl.
Yeah, like ZP's weird relationship vibe between these people. Like, because Momo's clearly got, as far as I can tell, like, at least like a little babby crush on our big hipped robot. Or
at least like daddy vibes.
Something. There's something going on here.
God damn it.
This is the point where Treykov starts to really start going bad for him, and he has like the beginnings of like a pretty long flashback sequence that we just kind of dip in and out of. He drugs himself with something. We cut back to you wandering around on this dock station. There is a girl in a clinic named Luti. She is from a planet which is called Ariadne, but the planet is gone. And due to whatever trauma she endured from, I don't know, her fucking planet not existing anymore, she hasn't been talking for a while, you're told, as you walk around. We then cut back to Trenkov and his, like, weird nightmare shit going on. He's, like, got visions of what looks like a white Zohar, I think. And then we go to Shion, who's having her own weird hallucination shit. She starts hearing a girl calling to her. We see the same girl that we brought up in the past, this little toe-headed blonde girl, and she says, it might be too late. The choice is up to him. Shion might understand him in his final moments and will bring him comfort. Mystery boxes.
Yes. Mystery boxes. This is the point, right? This is right where the ship... We get to the point where the ship is surrounded by Gnosis.
Yes.
Yep.
And, there's a whole scene where, an exciting space battle scene where Cosmos uses, what's it called? The
Hilbert effect.
The Hilbert effect.
A big-ass Hilbert effect.
To make all of the interdimensional space whales... come into our world.
The spirits within monsters.
The spirits within monsters.
Don't you mean her ex-buster?
Yeah. And then the Elsa gets swallowed by a whale.
The cathedral ship.
Yes.
The cathedral ship.
More
and we get
biblical
to,
allegory stroke vor.
Yep.
Okay. Hard stop. How much of, from where we stopped in the previous podcast to here, how much of Xenosaga has, in terms of time, just regular time, how much of Xenosaga has occurred?
It took me like 8 hours.
Okay, hard stop. 8 hours is about me too.
Yeah, ish.
How much of this 8 hours did we actually play?
3?
3 or 4?
Less than half. Give me that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, the cathedral ship is actually, like,
No, I'm talking about everything that leads up to the cathedral ship. From where we ended last podcast to here, to this point, where we get our first true dungeon.
Played, 40% of it.
And most of those times in which we played it, I feel like, Jeff, you kind of mentioned this. It's like traversing the characters from one cutscene to the next. There's not really a lot to do.
Or it's the Utic battleship, where it's like a really short, dumb dungeon that introduces you to a character.
So this is a long... this is the Crucible.
This might be... the cathedral ship might be the most significant we have played this game without interruption.
Yeah, it's not even close, really.
This is like a 3-hour dungeon.
This is also probably the point where a non-zero amount of people were like, right, taking this one back. I'm done. I'm good. I've seen it. Yeah. This is a extensive fucking dungeon with a save point at the beginning and a save point at the end, and about 3 hours of you are going to learn how to play this game, young man.
Yep. There are 3 save points in the entire dungeon, and they are spread very far apart. And also, this is where the enemies start hitting hard, and actually, you need to pay attention to their weaknesses.
Yeah, it's not like there's a particularly lousy encounter rate. It's, manageable. It's just that it takes a while.
Fights take a while.
And there's no, reprieve, basically.
And I would also say, because this is so early in the game, and remember, one of our earliest dungeons encouraged us not to engage with combat because it's a stealth mission.
Right.
So you haven't had a lot of opportunities to really become proficient in these mechanics. And there are even times in which your opportunities to get proficient in the mechanics, the game outright discourages you from engaging in combat. So it's literally throwing you into the fire. Trial by fire completely.
This is where I really got to the, I just need to kill these fuckers on this give me more points turn. That's the juice of this game. Because every time I'm not doing that, I'm basically losing out some amount of, level up ability. You get experience and you get all these points, but it's not like a, you get an extra 10. It's like a multiplier every time, and I think it's per thing you kill. And sometimes it's just that's worth twice as many points, and sometimes it's that's worth 10 times or 4 times.
Yep.
So it's like that it really, really starts to add up.
And this is where you can finally start using those points in an interesting way. Like, start building out your characters a little more. Momo gets the ability to steal stuff because she's the party's thief, I guess. Shion and Chaos both have AoE heals.
Yeah.
And Cosmos just has a bunch of buffs and debuffs that seem bad, but she hits like a truck, so I kept her in my party.
Yeah, and I would
can
just
also
say...
What is it? Skill points?
Yeah,
you can use to
points.
take aspects from equipment and permanently give them to your characters. And it seems like the good early one to do for that is to just give everyone poison immunity.
Yeah, that's going to start being really useful here.
I would just say the thing that definitely, if you don't... Again, I feel like this game has done a terrible job of even communicating how you should even identify each character's like direction on these skill points. But this is when I kind of felt like the solution to deal with grind is to just slog. So if you're going to find a way to make my time miserable, I'm just going to find the easiest way to blow through all this shit. So this is when I genuinely fell in love with my favorite mechanic in the game, and that is the tech attacks.
Yeah.
Which, if you spam that shit, you are all aboard the gravy train.
Like, your character's regular spells seem way less useful than just hitting them with tech attacks.
Exactly.
Because there are damaging spells, like Momo and Chaos both have damage spells. But
what's even funnier is that there are some tech attacks that even heal your characters, and it's like, well, then what the fuck am I gonna... Why would I ever use a regular curative spell?
I don't have any of those, but I've got a team that basically has no offensive magic yet, but they all hit basically like trucks, except for Shion, who's like...
Shion's
a white mage, and isn't, like... She's okay at what she does, I guess. But I've gone okay. Based on my poking around, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily grind up any of these other characters, like, ever, because I'm doing okay.
I'm doing okay as well.
Okay.
I feel like I have found the thing like Final Fantasy VIII style of let's just fucking punch everything into oblivion or like limit break. I just, when I feel like, nah, I'm not going to play by your rules, Xenosaga, I'm just going to use Cosmos's X-Buster or Chaos's Angel Blow, and then now everything's dead.
Yep.
So as you go out through this dungeon, there's like A plot, B plot. A plot is learn how to play this game, wander around for 3 hours in this like not particularly visually interesting early PlayStation 1 dungeon.
It's just a flesh dungeon.
Yeah. Like gray flesh dungeon, a little swimmy.
I kind of like the look of it, and I also like how it is this consumed planet.
Yeah.
That the Gnosis have basically completely conquered this planet and turned it into one of their own living creatures.
Yeah, it becomes pretty clear that this is what happened to Ariadne.
Ariadne.
And the B plot of this is Trenkov is also inside of this Jonah in the belly of the whale thing, wandering around in his own weird fugue state. So
having some 2001 A Space Odyssey-esque flashback.
So just to kind of walk through as you go through the dungeon, which is just you fight JRPG combat, there's really not a lot going on. You get his whole fucking backstory, basically.
Oh, it's so good.
This is the point where I was like, all right, this might actually be unironically kind of interesting at this point. Just because this is all kind of bonkers.
Also, I want to say I called it. He's not a human man.
Yeah, he's got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, he's got some issues.
So the beginning of all this flashback shit is just him on some sort of walkway full of people. A wooden-ass door just kind of appears in a very 2001 kind of way that he goes through, and there's a vision of some sort of big fucking fight, presumably during the Miltian conflict. A girl at some point warns Shion that Shrenkov will be gone soon. This blonde girl that keeps sort of appearing to her. And then we kind of get into it. Shrenkov appears, again in like weird flashback form, in some sort of like pod prison sensory like the thing from Spinal Tap, where they do the thing where they're on the pods on the stage where they're doing rock and roll creation. He's in one of those.
Then they can't get out.
And in front of some sort of civil servant judge sorts of people. They say he is a victim of the life recycling law, and based on what he's done, it may not necessarily be fair or right to give him capital punishment for whatever it is he did. He is sentenced to something called Level 7 Personality Reconditioning. And they say the current Shrenkov as a person will cease to exist. A Hebrew character briefly glows on his forehead, as this is said. We then cut to sometime in the future, and he is having... Shrenkov is in a facility with what I think is one of these civil servant judge people, and Shrenkov is lamenting that he cannot have a child with this woman.
Yeah,
this woman says that
is waving
his DNA.
She is waving the right to clone herself or something in front of him.
Which I thought that cloning was a bad thing in the world of this land, but
sure.
Okay, sure.
She says that he can't have a child because his DNA is screwed up and nanotechnology is unable to fix it. She calls him a bit of nucleic acid desperately clinging to life. And says she is married to him basically for research purposes, and implies that she gets all of the physical attention she needs from what looks like a VR headset.
Yep, and she throws it at him and it hits him on the head.
So he then commits matricide. Not matricide.
Yep.
Just kills his...
He just
jumps on her and chokes her to death.
Which they don't show, but they show the aftermath of.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, I kind of like this game. Just, there's violence. People just die.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that I feel like Final Fantasy and even, like, you know, Dragon Quest kind of shied away with. No, this game just straight up shows people getting murdered.
Yeah. Like, okay.
There's a lot of
it's
that.
It's a bummer with, like, the first one of those we kind of see is, like, let's kill someone's wife for basically insulting their, like, sexual abilities or whatever.
The most heinous thing that Chernikov's about to do is coming up.
Yeah. So, another trial. He is sentenced to level 8 personality reconditioning, which will cause him to lose his human rights, become federal property, roughly equal to a Realian in terms of the rights that he has. A different Hebrew character then glows on his forehead. We cut back to this walkway, which becomes clear by this point that this walkway was on the planet Ariadne.
Is this where we see the fish poster?
I think this happens where the fish poster is, which is this amazing fucking...
Oh, so good. Jeff, describe the fish poster.
Right.
It's just like, 6 fish heads with the
word Y
with a question mark?
It's unbelievable. It's like the most fucking PlayStation 1 looking thing. It looks like something out of LSD. The game, not the product. That's a joke. There's a girl on the walkway, and the girl just calls him garbage. Just says Shrenkov is garbage.
I'm 90% sure... Arbitrary or Braden, back me up. I'm 90% sure this is a Evangelion reference.
Like from the very end of the show, right?
The movie.
Oh, the film.
End of Evangelion. Yeah. I'm 90% sure this is a reference to that. Because that's exactly how the end of Evangelion ends.
So he strangles her. He is in a prison cell, is the next thing you see, and he is being described as a test subject for the level 9 personality realignment procedure thing. Cut back to the walkway on everyone is dead. He's apparently killed the entire staff of some sort of facility and 3 special ops troops from the federal government that have come to be like, you've got to calm down, mister. Enter Margulis. who says that Trenkov is a life recycling variant and offers him the opportunity to leave behind a legacy once he shows him proof of his own existence. So all this takes like half an hour in real time, and it's spread out over the course of this dungeon. Like, you get like a little dribble of it, and then a little dribble of it, and then a little dribble of it. Which is maybe a strange way to tell a story, but it's the story they're telling.
I think I liked it. I actually found Chernikov's like backstory oddly compelling, if not the most compelling thing they've done in this game in terms of pure storytelling.
This game has a lot of exposition, but I feel like it maybe needs a little more, like, this is going to sound weird for it. It is an indulgent game that relishes in itself, but also I think it's nice to just have some character work instead of just characters ominously stating things without context.
Yeah, I think what's in there is, like, actually pretty good. It kind of, well, they did in fact turn this into several anime manga products at a certain point, which makes sense because the game here is pretty basic. But they had a lot of plot ideas very clearly. Anyway, so at this point you've been in this dungeon for a hot fucking minute, just like learning how to play the game better and optimizing grinding. You finally come to the center of this dungeon at long last, and there's a big ass Zohar in there, potentially, as far as you can tell.
Potentially.
We cut back to Trenkov, continuing to walk around. There's another Zohar and Margulis. Trenkov is talking to Margulis while he's on the Voglinde, talking about some very if either the Utic raid from 2 years ago or like what just happened at the beginning of the game. I can't really remember, but Margulis describes it as a test of loyalty to the organization. Cut back to reality as Trenkov is walking around and he sees what look like ghosts. Briefly, they're not gnosis, but they're like ghost people from Ariadne. This was weird. Does anyone else remember this?
I remember it. I just, again, if it's another scene that I feel like I don't feel like I fully understand what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, they're just weird scenes where things happen, and
this was very much that.
They're kind of in conflict of the A and B plot. Like, I don't know how any of this furthers us trying to save Chernikov from something.
Yeah.
Like this little ghost child's telling Shion that she needs to sell Chernikov or else he'll die. To which I was like, well, let him fucking die. He's an evil dude.
He's like
he's a serial killer man.
It's like, yeah, he can die. Why do I feel why do you want me to invest in preventing him from dying?
I don't know how someone who is like a serial killer gets to a high-ranking commander position in the Federation.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's Margulis
pulling strings.
Appreciates his pure killing potential. Like that's what I got out of it. But also, he's evil. At no point did Shion or any of the other crew, like, at no point did he treat Momo with respect. At no point did he... All of these characters are trying to rescue this guy who, for every part of the story that we've seen him in, has done things to either undermine their safety or actively tried to harm them.
It's pretty fucking bizarre.
Dude is a sad and pathetic villain, and these flashbacks kind of just show, like, his whole deal.
And like at this point in this dungeon, all of this is being punctuated, but what amounts to like a Doom fucking gate and key unlocking puzzle sequence.
Yeah.
Like, which is somehow worse than the tedious part that it took to get up to it. But finally, after a long series of going up and down fucking elevators with keys, you get to a big goddamn Fallout door that just says Zohar on it.
Yeah, it just says the name, Zohar.
Which opens, and what if I told you, inside, it's a Zohar.
It's another big old golden monolith with a Hebrew character
which Cosmos identifies as the same one from the Voglinde. Trenkov shows up. He chastises Shion for not knowing about this Zohar business. This is where I noted that Trenkov like, he's not walking, like, he's walking like someone in pain, like, struggling. And I was trying to put my finger on it. Because I've seen someone walk like this before. And this is where it hit me. This is one of my wrote in all caps notes. He walks like Torgo.
The hands of
Yes,
fate?
he has the Torgo walk. Which this game also has a master. I'm just saying.
Well, actually, Torgo also transforms into a horrible abomination, if you recall correctly.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So, what happens to Chernikov when he starts walking all like Torgo?
He turns transparent, and
Yeah.
then he gets filled up with gnosis
Just
juice,
purple
and
shit
then
flows into him.
purple. Yeah.
And Ziggy
And
says
then
it's
he-
just like that day, which I love. It's like, God, this is apparently like the gut check boss fight, and if you can figure out how to do this, the game's gonna go good for you. And if not, you like didn't learn the lesson or whatever. You didn't learn the secret.
What was the secret, Jeff? Grinding until
Basically,
you finally
yeah,
got
get the
characters?
points. Like, just get to kill people on turn
eggs
4.
are pretty good. The robots are pretty good.
Yeah, like this is he's got 2 options basically that you've got to sort of manage while you're fighting. And like apparently this is one of the fights that they're like, hey, if you don't kill this guy and get like a points times 10 bonus, just reset. Just go back and do it again because it's really worth it. I did not do that. I'm not going to. This fight also takes a minute.
This fight took me 3 attempts.
I got through my first time, but it took me a little bit.
I got it my first time, but again, I'm just spamming the cheap shit and hoping for the best, and that went well. I got into critical health maybe once. I think
I had to res people once or twice to get through this one as I think about it.
Basically that, but I just used my fucking special abilities, and he's some sort of weird goblin monster.
Yeah, gargoyle is what he's listed as.
He's called a gargoyle, but sure. I when he transformed, I just pumped my fist in the air. I was like, yeah, this is the anime dog shit I wanted. This is the schlocky bullshit I wanted.
Well, and it really fucking ramps up after you beat this, because Shion has a vision as soon as it's done. Trenkov and Margulis are on the bridge of a ship somewhere. They're talking about, like, the light that symbolized civilization and people casting away the ability to create.
Nothingness,
and Margulis says people are subhuman and lack, like, will, and praises Trenkov for not losing himself after reconditioning his personality. And
but he was a murderer, so why are you praising him for being a murderer?
Mankind. This is
because he doesn't count them as people.
This is where we get the Monolith Soft mono story of like mankind forced to leave their home planet, really spelled out specifically.
Yeah.
And he says, "Let us rekindle the torch, so that human consciousness may be resurrected for their sake and for their god." Shion says something to the effect that she feels Cherenkov's happiness in this flashback. Now, we then cut to a shore. We aren't even fucking hiding it anymore. They're just doing Eva. Shion is there with Cherenkov, who says that he never existed at all. 36 years ago. I love it when as soon as you start, like, this feels like a pretext crawl to a bad feature-length straight-to-DVD film. But 36 years ago, the Zohar incident led to the Milshin conflict. He was created as a weapon of warfare and somehow survived, but felt conflicted and alienated.
Yeah, fine, sure. And then there's like the Life Recycling Act or some shit like that? I don't know. He's a superhuman. He killed a bunch of stuff. He couldn't adapt to modern society, and now metaphor.
This is very Metal Gear too, I guess, specifically.
Yeah.
Basically, Chernikov is your stand-in for Monolith Soft putting in a character, war bad, war leave emotional scar. Let's stop war.
I'm on this beach talking about life, and then I disappear. But before he disappears, he tells Shion she'll be like him one day.
My favorite, the part of this that really messes me up is that Shion has this interaction with Chernikov, and it deeply affects her. When we come back to the modern era, she's like overwhelmed by his death, just starts crying, weeping in sorrow. And it's like, girl, he tried to kill you.
He was a big, scary fucking monster. And
he's a
that
monster,
was even
man,
before he turned into a literal monster.
And then he choked to death his cloned daughter of his wife.
Yep.
But, of course, we need to have sad crying, rain on crying face, so it looks like the tears are... We need that scene in this thing.
Yep.
Also, briefly in this little part, Momo says she senses something happening in Ziggy, which is not elaborated on at all, because once this happens, everyone starts floating.
And then the interdimensional space whale disappears, and the Elsa picks them up.
And they are immediately pursued by just a shit ton of space whale spirits within monsters, but they're blasted away, because this is the point where the Durandal arrives on the scene and just blows the shit out of a bunch of Gnosis.
So, is the game implying that the cathedral ship was an optical illusion, or it existed, but once it was done delivering you its metaphor sandwich, it's just going to go peace?
Yes. It phased out of reality or something once they got the Zohar or something.
So once we
That's
do
pretty JRPG
low rent,
kind of like get the crystal and then the cave collapses. Like, okay, but it's fucking...
But it's a living thing, right?
I don't know. Where did the whale go after Jonah got out of it?
I mean, this entire game seems to be like hammering on the what is truly alive, what is living.
Yeah.
And you're right, Jeff. I mean, we have these weird moments, like, what is it? Like, Ziggy has a bunch of weird moments, and also like interstitial like cutscenes. Like, so Ziggy is like, he was supposed to rescue Momo, who was kidnapped by Utic. And they wanted data from her that she has in her mind because her creator is...
Joachim Mizrahi.
He's a special man. I forget. He's someone's husband, isn't he?
Yes, he's the husband of the lady from the Federation.
Oh, yeah.
And he is the one
So Ziggy is a cyborg who's with SOCE, right?
Yep.
And I still don't know what that acronym stands for. I just remember they say SOCE in the text a bunch.
Yep.
And then they need to get Momo because Momo has information about their leader's husband.
Yep.
I forget, is he dead?
Joachim Mizrahi is dead.
Okay.
And also he is the one... I think this comes up maybe a little later, but he is the one who basically unleashed the Gnosis upon humanity by messing around with the Zohar.
Yeah, that's definitely later, but he's the scientist who unleashed the Gnosis. I guess that's worth noting. We find out that the Gnosis aren't just some random alien monster. They are a human creation that basically got out of control, kind of like the Geth in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Or, if you go by the continuity laid by Star Trek Fleet, that also the Borg were created by V'ger after V'ger interacted with an alien race form after the events of the Voyager program going outside of the corona of the sun.
So the Durandal is like shooting a bunch of Gnosis, and it's doing pretty good, but it's not getting all of them. This is the point where you get a brief... Something really amazing is about to happen. And I'm not even talking about the thing you think I'm talking about. There's a brief moment where you get a really good look at the captain of the Elsa's hat. Can you tell me what the captain's hat says?
What does Captain Matthews' hat say?
Captain Matthews' hat says, "Caution, I am a boozer, bonsai bonsai." This is maybe the greatest character since Dog's Bower. From fucking...
That's a deep cut,
Dog's
my man.
Bower, the mascot of Hardcore Gaming 101. Truly a fucking amazing fucking video game character. The only thing that would have completed him is a hat that says, "Caution, I am a boozer, bonsai bonsai," that he wears when he takes a bath, when he says, "I'm gonna take a bath." Right, so the actual cool thing that happens is... all the Gnosis are swarming. It's not looking great. Cosmos just fucking dips and goes out through the cargo chute. And everyone is like, yo,
her eyes are
they are blue. They are glowing. She says, will pain make me feel like I am complete? Will feeling pain make me a complete being? Which the party comments they can't hear because she is in the vacuum of space and there is no medium to convey her voice. So they just see her lip flap. And they're like, what the fuck's going on?
I like, though, that is the thing. It's like, Cosmos, what are you doing?
She,
Shion's relationship with Cosmos is...
It's the best recurring storyline in the game.
It's a very good bit, because Shion's just like, Cosmos, don't do that, young lady. And then Cosmos is like, I'm sorry, Shion, I cannot listen.
HAL 9000.
It's good
She
shit.
magnet boots her way to, like, the ass end of the Elsa. And she opens up basically her robot womb area.
8-pack.
Tummy.
Her navel.
Yep. And a big blue crystalline energy thing comes out of her back. And then a enormous beam of energy comes out of her, like, navel area. And literally, like, as far as the eye can see through, like, the interstellar medium of space of Gnosis, just disappear. Now, I thought this was her turning into a space gun. And, shooting them, right? Like, with a big magic laser beam.
Yeah.
But what the game says is she absorbed them.
Yep. Alan and Shion. We keep on forgetting to mention Alan because he's a boring nothing man.
And they make him sad. Like, it's the way they want you to feel. He's just a dork.
He's the straight man, and he's a dork.
My comments here are absorbs them, ? What? ?
She's a Ghostbuster.
She is a Ghostbuster.
Hold it. I wrote down something after this happened because I was losing it. And it's that wasn't a weapon. That was something impossible.
Something impossible. And Shion wonders if it's something that Kevin modified. Who's Kevin?
I don't know who Kevin is either.
His original creator, who was the head of the project, but he was killed during the UTIC raid, I think.
Okay. So this isn't a new... That's a bow being put on an Abrams box. Not a new one being constructed.
Regardless, Shion and Alan are like, we didn't even know she had this mysterious ability. And then, hard cut, the Elsa is rescued by Junior and the Durandal.
Another brief hard cut. Margulis learns that Trankov is probably dead, and is just like, okay, cool.
He's disaffected at evil anime dude.
Elsa Crew answers to Junior, aka Little Master. They work for him. Junior tells the Elsa Crew to get repairs from the Kukai Foundation. Shion is fucking astonished at this. And Alan says they probably shouldn't associate with this Kukai Foundation. This is the point where we learn Little Master's name is Gainem Jr., who says that Gainem Sr. should be told that they have the last Zohar emulator with them now. They go through a wormhole.
The proper noun syndrome.
And as they disappear, one eggs just sort of appears as if it has been following them, like a van, like through town. And then it just fades into one of this game's trademark mid-cutscene save points. Brief side note, how often have you guys actually used the eggs system in fighting?
I have used them a lot.
Really?
They, like, if you give them missile pods and stuff, they do a lot of AoE damage.
That's the one use I've found for them is AoE.
I feel like in combat, and also they have way more HP than your characters, but in combat I feel like they are slower than your characters in a way that occasionally makes it feel like their damage output doesn't quite compensate unless you do the W act, which requires you to save up all 6 AP. But I think eggs are useful. And
I think they're useful, like you said. If you need to immediately sweep something, they're useful in that. Outside of that, I only use them when I feel like I don't want to deal with, like, there have been times where I get into a combat situation, I get into a battle, I see what is on the board, basically, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I don't feel like going through the 5-8 minutes that are going to require me. I'm going to pop a egg so that I can speed this up.
I should maybe get into the habit of doing that more often, because I've barely touched them.
Yeah, it's just
they don't get
would
boost, and they can't get healed.
Yeah, the healing you have for them is very finite, and it's made me really cautious about using those healing items, which has just made me cautious about using the eggs. And so far, that's not bit me in the ass. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm missing out. Apparently, the second game in the series, like, kind of elaborates the system, because it's basically like a summon, for lack of a better word. Like, it feels sort of like Final Fantasy X summon-ish. And apparently they, like, really built it out later as they went on.
I just want to point out, like, Shion and Alan spend all this time marveling over Cosmos' ability. And when, you know, we find out that the Zohar emulators are named after Jesus's apostles, and also that Junior has these half-human Gnosis hybrids on the ship, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's okay. Sure, whatever. It's like, when I saw Betty, it's like, oh, shit.
The Gnosis are people!
Right, so come back from this pre-cutscene, this mid-cutscene save point, and we get another flashback. Junior is somewhere. He is running. There's just, like, scenes of just a destroyed cityscape around him. He looks at the sky and he says, Gynum. He then finds a cat named Gynum. The cat is dead, as I recall. It is raining, and he cries in the anime rain. We then cut again to another sequence of Junior, and he is holding what appears to be another small man about his size, and tells him not to say anything. It's all over. He is inside some sort of glowy hexagon space as this happens. He then falls into what I can only describe as sort of a red mist, and then wakes up. This is the point where this boy, man, looks at his fucking hand, and it just says 666. Which is amazing.
The little anime boy is the Antichrist.
He's not the fucking number of the beast just on him. Just out of nowhere. Just okay. The next day...
Junior takes them back to the Kukai Foundation.
Well, before that, he takes them, the whole party, He's like, I'm going to show you around my ship. He's like a little Sonic the Hedgehog sounding dude. He says, hey, I'm going to take you to this room, which Momo helpfully describes as climate controlled. And there's 13 fucking Zohars in there, which are identified with all the names of the disciples as we've laid on. What's the 13th one called? The 13th one is named Mariankind, which basically means child of Mary. Junior says they're holding on to them as part of, basically, their, like, corporation business that he's holding on to them, but they're also good for, like, defense from the Gnosis, just having them. In the room across from this giant antechamber full of Zohars, which is very large, is, like a, weird specimen room full of people who are semi-transformed into Gnosis, which are, like, 4 tadpole-looking, very spirits within motherfuckers.
It looks like Final Fantasy VII's, like, the whole... God, what
like
is Genova shit?
Yeah, or it's like Resident Evil Laboratory
yes.
shit.
Yeah, like the
Bio...
Tyrant virus experiment.
Yes, the main one, it looks kind of like the princess from Ocarina of Time and Genova smashed together, and Junior identifies her as Betty, for no other reason than it's seemed like a good name. He says they've been studying these for a long time, and they've not learned a whole lot, except their bodies are made out of basically salt and water. They're not sure if the Gnosis is just a virus, or if it is in fact a group of interdimensional beings. As he's going on, Xion remembers that she in fact got Gnosis touched while on the Voglinde, and yet here she is fine. It's also explained that the Gnosis have been around for the past few centuries, and they came into prominence thanks to Joachim Mizrahi, who was the founder of UTIC and also a lunatic and bad person. As people elaborate on the fact that this guy may in fact be, like, bad, Momo wanders off, feeling bad that people are like, hey, your dad sucks and stuff. The Kukai Foundation was apparently founded on behalf of, like, the space government to, like, clean up and fact-find after the Miltian conflict. And doing that is very expensive, so they've branched off into a bunch of, like, private industrial projects.
It kind of reminds me of Men in Black, when Will Smith's character's like, how are you funding all of this? Oh, we own a couple of important patents, the internet, Ziploc, microwaves.
Right. Like, very fobbed off, like, big, yeah. Seem like they've got their fingers on it.
Because you get into this foundation, and it's this giant terrarium almost, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like this impossible
chandelier-looking thing, and it's got this ecosystem. It's a very ornate organism. It looks like Citadel Station in Mass Effect. But I guess you could say Citadel Station in Mass Effect looks like this. But it's a God, what's the term for it?
It's not a Dyson sphere.
It's a Dyson cube thing. But it's a mega structure that's housing groups of humanity in this.
It's a space colony from Gundam, basically.
Yeah. Yes, there you go. So you get to explore the Durandal for a little bit here. And you wander around, there's like a shop, it's tedious, it's all connected by like a fast travel system. Eventually you meet up with Momo, who is lamenting that if her creator is evil, then she's gotta be bad as well, the transitive property of evilness. Someone says the phrase identity diffusion here, which is just like, we need more jargon. Xion makes it very clear that she is down with the idea of like artificial life being like equal to biological life, and notes that there are like insects on this ship that provide like very basic like function for like letting people live, and that Mizrahi made those too. Like their whole job is just going around cleaning stuff basically. And like, if those are important, then how much more important must me be? Which is like very fucking Christological, consider the birds of the field moment. And then Cosmos walks up and is like, yeah, totes. Which Xion's just like delighted, like, hey, that's a nice thing to say. Cosmos was like,
you said it.
Yeah,
empathy.
Cosmos was like, yeah, I don't really know about this empathy shit, but I thought I'd try it. This is said in her trademark robot way, not the way I said it.
Cosmos' voice actress is very good.
Her delivery is easily like the best of all of these. Like, it feels very natural in the way that you would expect a robot to sound. Momo says that Mizrahi, her creator, said she could become a real person if she performed good deeds.
Pinocchio. Now we're getting Pinocchio references.
The Kukai Foundation, the party learns, is willing to transport the party to Second Miltia, which Xion is like, everyone is trying to go to Second Miltia. This enormous space foundation that is involved in all of this shit seems totally willing to aid and abet and help us out. And her friend Alan's like, I don't know. I don't see any coincidences here at all. And I don't know why you'd be suspect of any of these people. They've given us a jacuzzi. Like, a total fucking rube, idiot, moron, geek, dum-dum. This is the point where I noted finally that these characters are named Mary and Shelley, that have been talking to Junior, by the way. As you're exploring around, you get some information on why there's like all these apparently incredibly rare 100 series Realians. Because Shelley says she tells Xion, the Vector Corporation CEO is a major Kukai investor and just gives them access to all of these 100 series realians just for testing. Just to try them out, see how they do. So they're just like driving this giant space building around. This is where you get a pop-up ad for Ace Combat 4, too.
Yes.
Which, I don't know if we mentioned the Vampire Knight one that happened earlier, but you get a pop-up ad for Vampire Knight early in this game. And now you get a pop-up ad, by which I mean like an in-game email system ad that's just like, hey, Ace Combat 4 is really good. It's correct. Ace Combat 4 is really good. It's better
I was
than
about
this
to
game.
say, Jeff, did you squee as the resident lover of Ace Combat other than the most recent one?
I haven't played 7 yet, but it looks very good. I'm a believer in Ace Combat. I'll take it any form I can get.
Does Xenosaga take place in the Strange Reel?
I don't think it does.
Wait, is this on the Namco Compendium timeline? UTCC timeline?
I don't think it's on the... I don't think this is in the Strange Reel.
Does Dig Dug take place in the Xenosaga timeline?
This,
Mr. Driller?
This talks about Mr. Driller,
distant grandparent,
which means they're aware of Mr. Driller. So this at least is in a place where they are aware that the UGSF exists. So by the transitive property of Mr. Driller, this is part of the Strange Reel. So, yes? Someone's done the research on this. Also, this is where you get to go to the casino.
Yeah.
I finally discovered how to get to the mini games. And
they suck.
Can we talk about the card game in this thing? Cause
it's horrible!
The card game seems real bad.
I can't believe I spent money on the starting deck for that thing, because I'm never using it again.
Like Magic the Gathering, like triple triad thing in their game, and it is hot trash.
But hey, howdy, damn dog, isn't it time for a swimsuit scene?
Sure is.
I didn't quite get to swimsuit. This is about where I tailed off, so you're gonna have to walk me through a little farther. But
all right.
So we dock. The Durandal arrives at this big space station, the Kukai Foundation space station. Momo says, "Oh look, we're docking," and Jeff chuckled. My brain is my brain has been rotted away. A man walks in, and he's flanked by Mary Shelley, who introduces himself as Guinan Kukai.
Guinan Sr.
Guinan
and he's
Sr.
voiced by Crispin Freeman, so you know there's something ominous about him.
Yeah, and it becomes very help Jeff chuckle more when his hand has 699 on it. So he introduces himself, and it's weird and standoffish, and as he exits, he side-eyes Shion. His eyes kind of glow, and he says, "No, it can't be." We cut to Guinan Sr. in his office with Guinan Jr. They're talking about the crazy potential of Cosmos' powers. And says he is suspicious that Shion is actually aware that Guinan and Guinan Jr. himself have some other power shit going on. Jr. notes that Shion was working in the same division as Helmer. Who's Helmer? For some project component of the fucking Vector Corporation. Jr. says go easy on shit-talking Mizrahi because they were both there when he died. Guinan then hands Jr. a fucking Makarov as like a, hey, thanks for handling the shit good.
Specifically name-dropped.
Yes.
A Makarov pistol.
This was before Call of Duty taught us all about Makarovs and Kar 98s and Mosin Nagants and M1s. Guinan Jr. then reminds Guinan that he is older than him, the little boy. There's a save point not long after that. That's as far as I've gotten. So y'all just keep plowing ahead.
There's not a lot to say. They basically give the characters an excuse, right, Braden, to just relax because they have to wait for some shit to develop.
You go to Guinan's private beach, hang out.
Which means all of the characters wear trope-appropriate swimsuit outfits. Momo wears a pink and white one-piece swimsuit that looks very similar to the anime Japanese schoolgirl swimsuit.
Yep.
Shion is in a white and black bikini, and Cosmos obviously needs to wear a bikini because she's already wearing one.
Yeah.
So they give her a different bikini that, personally, I feel like kind of covered her body in certain areas more than her actual outfit.
Yep. Yep, and Alan is wearing like an old-style 1920s swimsuit, because of course he is.
Yeah, it's like the full stripes and like the shoulders or the
Yeah.
it's covering his entire body and torso. I don't know. I always appreciate when RPGs give you an opportunity to just kick back. I liked it in BioWare's games. I've liked it in I even when I do dungeon mastering my own part, my own self, I give my players opportunity to just kick back, relax,
hang out.
and you feel like you can kind of learn a little bit about these characters. Now, personally, I feel like almost all of this is in service of seeing these characters in swimsuits.
Yeah.
And really, you don't really learn what, Braden? We don't really learn that much about these characters other than
you learned that Xion really doesn't like thunder.
Yeah,
because
okay,
Junior
fine.
uses
She's
the
afraid
climate
of thunder,
control, and she has a panic attack. But most of the rest of this part of the Kukai Foundation is just like a point for you to basically gear up and explore a little bit, and I appreciate that, and that's as far as I got.
Yeah, I feel like this is also when the game was communicating, yo, you need better equipment.
Yeah, I'd kind of updated along the way a little bit to the point where I'm actually pretty cash-strapped now, but I'm kind of good.
I got a shitload of money for investing in one of those companies super early in the game. Like, I got 72,000.
Yeah, there's a stock system, I forgot.
Yeah,
I also had that happen.
72,000?
I wouldn't say that it broke the economy.
I spent it all on eggs parts.
72,000?
Yeah.
Did I hear you right?
Yes, in a game where having 3,000 is a lot of money.
I've never had more than 10.
I've had 10 because I also invested right. You should really invest in the stock market system, Jeff. I don't know if it progresses linearly.
I respond to those emails when I get them.
Yeah.
But I got the most recent one, I didn't even have enough money to respond to it.
I had to sell some unicorn horns.
I only had like 5 of them. I've been selling all the like listed as junk parts too.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, anyway. So
now comes the ceremonial. ZP wants to play something different, but Braden and Jeff veto him. So I vote to skip. No, you fuckers.
I want to see the end of this game. I'm sorry, Chris.
I have to be honest. I'm almost with both of you. I am almost with both of you. The problem is like whenever we actually play this game, it hits you hard and it is plotting and slow in a way.
The JRPG part of this game is perfect podcast game material.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing. Like when you consider how crazy the actual story is, it's a damn shame.
And how involved it is, and how much is going on, and then the actual game part is something I very much kind of just like, I'm just going to watch some VTubers while I, destroy these aliens that just look like fantasy monsters.
And it's weird because Xenogears is kind of fun to play. Like, I don't know why Monolith decided that this was the game where they would really de-emphasize the combat or just make it far more traditional. And you even look like Xenoblades. Like, they did some really interesting things.
Xenoblade does some weird stuff with its combat.
I think this might be the game that makes me, like, hard stop wanting to do turn-based JRPG stuff ever again. In some ways, like, I guarantee that won't actually happen.
Yeah, but this game is very slow.
Yeah, like, give me, like, a fucking Tales game or something where I hit a button and a thing happens.
I want to do some air juggles.
Anything?
It's just that's the thing is like it feels like there's no way to make grinding or fighting especially efficient unless you want to spend eggs, unless you want to use ability points. Whereas, when we play the Final Fantasy franchise, like Jeff, there's usually always one strategy of just wailing away on things and just being super fast, right? You're going through Final Fantasy 12, Jeff. In comparison, Final Fantasy XII at least has a variety of combat scenarios, different character classes, and a leveling system that feels like deeply connected with the rest of the mechanics. Here, the characters kind of just level up.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's I think, an illusion of choice going on here, because they give you all these points you can spend.
And you can give characters ether abilities to other characters, which is useful for AoE healing and basically nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's like half the cost of the spell, which you buy in like ether points to do that. And yeah, I don't know why you would, because again, none of the characters I'm going to main through this game seem to have really offensive magic abilities at all. So it's just, it would be nice if they had the ability to heal a little more, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So versus something like 12, which has problems, but especially in the Zodiac Age version of that game, it's like, well, I've got all this like space for creativity. I guess that like there's an expectation of a little more like creativity and player involvement in a game now versus 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But this isn't like surprising. It's just I don't know. You're here for this convoluted plot shit.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And
the part where you play it is tolerable to acceptable.
This may be the best way for you, the listener, to experience Xenosaga 1, I guess. Is letting us do the grinding.
Well, I have great news, Jeff.
Yes?
Based on what I've heard about Xenosaga 2's combat, it's even more of a slog.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Though
like,
having looked up the how long to beat times for all these games, it is apparently the shortest one. Okay. But, yeah.
It's the Devil May Cry 2 of the trilogy is what I've been told.
Oh, boy.
I hear... Oh, no, that's a horrible thing to say. Jesus.
I've been told repeatedly that 2 is the worst of the Xenoblade, Xenosaga.
Yeah,
it's the
I'm
worst
just saying
one.
Devil May Cry 2 is not just a poor sequel. It is a nothing blob of a game.
Well, for the sake of
my
ZP,
community endurance run stream,
I don't think we are going to be playing Xenosaga 2
not
anytime
for a while.
Soon.
Nope.
I asked for at least a year. Please.
We need a breather between these games.
There's a lot of tales to get through.
Yeah.
And other stuff. So that's... I think the next time we record, we're going to be done with this game.
We need to finish this.
Yeah. It's weird, because the median time for this game is about 40 hours, and I'm at about hour 20, and it looks like I'm like 2/3 through this game, so I'm either like ahead of the curve, or there's a lot of shit left. And I gotta say, if there's a lot of shit left, I don't know where they're gonna pack it, but most of it's gotta be movies. Like,
I'm okay with that.
Sure, I guess that's why I'm
Better
here.
movies than Dungeon Crawl.
I guess that's why I'm here, so yeah, okay. I feel better, thanks to what you just said.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the more mechanics. I don't know. Is there any reason? Do you know? Have you looked up? Do we actually need to play all of these mini games in the Kukai Foundation?
Absolutely not.
Oh God. Are we talking about just the like the drill game?
No, like even the Xeno card, the
Subquests.
drilling mini game.
Yeah,
the
man,
poker thing.
The drill game. I've tried so many times to beat that. The worst thing about those mini games, I guess the drill one specifically, is it fucking charges you money to try. So you're penalized for trying to learn how to play the thing. And it's one of those games, it's a fucking crane game, basically. Like, the problem is the perspective is shit no matter what you try to do. So, you could get good, and it would probably be fine to get good if you had a shit ton of money, but the other thing it does is it gates you after so many attempts that it's just like, sorry, the crane's tired. Gotta go away now. So, there's like very little opportunity to get good, I guess. Maybe I'm just shit at it. I don't know. Someone's probably in there just acing it, but it's not me. So there's that, which has at least healing items that come out of there, if not actually good gear.
It sounds like you can get some good items out of the casino. I don't want to play fake video game poker.
No, never again. It's a fun way to make money in San Andreas for about 30 minutes, and then you just And then, there's the shitty card game, and then there's, like, really bad Virtual On.
Bad Virtual On, yeah.
So I don't know. People who play the game for 80 hours are people who, I don't know how else they're playing it, except they're enjoying those way more than I am. But yeah, I refuse to engage with those anymore.
All right, so I'll just speed through the Kukai Foundation as much as possible. You got some anime bikini goodness coming up in your life, Jeff.
Great.
Yeah.
I've spent so long.
Our next episode is gonna start on a big plot thing, so
I'm excited. Thank you, both of you, for going through this game.
Braden, what's your lecture? We got episode 3.
Yeah.
What's your lecture going to be
All right.
about?
Well, listen, I don't know how I can put in my personal expertise on like early American history into this game, but I'll think of something. I'll think of a lecture about, I don't know,
Well,
like
when the framers conceived of Realian rights.
yeah.
The three.
Okay, so slavery in the Americas and North Atlantic is sort of like
Missouri Compromise.
Yes, Dr. Benjamin Rush. Let's talk about how he was way into bloodletting, just as bloodletting was getting out of fashion.
And then he brought it back.
I wrote a 21-page paper. I'm good.
Thank you to... Thank you all, listeners, for tuning into this installment of Off the Deep End. Again, questions you would like to send, comments, summaries of various animes and or wrestling plot lines and or defenses of various independent Japanese wrestling companies. Inquiries at deep.lol. That is inquiries at deep.lol. Also, if you'd like to consider helping out this show and the Deep Listens mothership, consider kicking us $1, literally one solitary dollar, or any other amount on patreon.com/deeplistens. That is patreon.com/deeplistens.
Who else are you going to give that Patreon money to, huh?
Exactly.
Danny O'Dwyer's doing just fine.
Special shout out once again to the artist known as SuperSex420 for providing us with the theme music Halfway. This and other great songs by SuperSex420 are available on bandcamp.com.
They're all bangers.
They are. It's a good, very good stuff. If you want to hear comparable stuff, you should definitely check out Pro Wave channel on YouTube, by the way. Thanks. See you next time. And remember, the penalty for murder is apparently 7th level personality realignment surgery or something, which apparently strips you of some of your rights, but not as many as the 8th level, which makes you like functionally a robot and government property, like turns you into a wrench, I guess. It's like enlisting. Bye!
Bye!